Even though we had instant success, all of a sudden the politicians turned to me. The parents were calling, complaining to the station. And it was just a lot of negative energy from the major record companies because they couldn't figure out, we're spending, you know, $100,000 over here on this record and you guys are over here playing Toddy Tee. What's going on? You have to understand, at that time, we weren't thinking that we were making history. We were just having fun. This is music that we liked. This was music that, you know, we knew that being out in the streets, the clubs and the concerts, this is what people wanted to see. So we just kind of shut the noise out. And, you know, to the general managers, you know, and Jack Patterson, my program directors, you know, I got to give them props that they did back me, and they're just like, you know. What the politicians wanted, some of the music in their eyes was degrading women and, you know, a poor reflection of what was going on in the neighborhood. But what they didn't realize is that the kids were not degrading women, because the kids, in their eyes, there's a difference between a bitch and a hoe. In the politicians' eyes, it was all derogative. And in the kids' eyes, it was okay to talk about what was going on in the streets. The politicians, because they didn't really know what was going on in the streets, were in shock. As for the record companies, they were spending all these dollars on, you know, the funk groups, and we weren't playing the record because we didn't have room. We were over here playing the hip-hop stuff. So, you know, I've had a couple of them get message to me that they're going to break my legs if I didn't play their record, literally. And I still didn't play it. You know, I'm like, all right, cool. And at that time, the major record stores refused to carry rap music. So there was nowhere to get it other than mom and pop record stores.
But there's 4 other black stations in LA that could play this music. Why would, you know, Group X get so mad at you for not playing a station or song on one station when there's other stations?
Well, it was deeper than that. It's such a misconception that we were a rap station. I was, I played R&B. I just didn't play the whack R&B. One thing about me is I listened to every song that came out. I didn't listen to what the record companies told me they wanted me to play. I would listen to the album and tell them, this is what I'm going to play. In many cases, it wasn't the single that they were spending all the money on, and that would piss them off. I can't begin to tell you how many B-sides, when they'd come out with 12 inches and they'd have an A and a B-side, I'd pick the B-side. Push It, Salt and Pepper was a B-side. I started that. Several months, maybe a year later, everybody started, oh wow, that's a hit, so they flipped it. Supersonic, JJ Fad, that was a B-side. I mean, I could go down the list of all the B-sides that I flipped over, but I didn't listen to what they told me because they weren't in my pocket. We had something happening there. And then we had the freestyle movement. The freestyle movement was going on, meaning artists that in the beginning, they were like high energy is what we called it. It later became freestyle, sort of the same evolution as rap into hip hop. But we had that going on. So you had freestyle, you had R&B, and of course you had hip hop or rap. And so we were multifaceted. Those other stations, they didn't understand it. I was hitting them from every angle. I was a radio war, and I was shooting bullets at them. Toddy Tee, he eventually got some airplay. Of course, when I played it, we were the only ones. We had a few records like that, but I didn't care about that. I didn't care if he got played in New York or wherever. All I knew is he was big in Los Angeles, and we were the only ones playing it at first. I think some of the other stations did add it after a while, because he was definitely relating to something that was going on that was on people's mind, the Batarang. Batarang was probably his only big hit. He did several after that, but he never had a hit. Toddy Tee did that himself, produced it himself, went and made copies of a cassette himself, and Matter of fact, when the kids used to come on my show to count down their favorite songs, they always wanted Bataram on the show. And I was like, what is this Bataram? Every day they wanted it. And I had to track him down and go buy a cassette out of the back of his trunk, and I put it on the air. All of them were basically independent at that time until there became a Macola. Now, what they would do is they knew that if they could come up with enough money to go to Macola to press them, that, you know, Macola would sign them if they sold enough records. It was a badge of honor to be signed by Macola. Everybody's like, oh man, I got signed by Macola. Not knowing that, you know, 10 times as many records was going out the back door as the front door, but they were just happy to say they were down with somebody. Macola was a pressing plant, but they tried to evolve into a record label, and they probably would have been one of the biggest record labels in hip-hop, but they lost the respect of the groups once the groups figured out that they weren't getting the money that they should be getting. Don McMillan, you know, God, I don't know how to say it other than the fact that he's always nice to me, but he had reason to be. But, you know, people, it wasn't that they didn't like him or anything that they left there, but they just didn't like the way he did business. The Mixmasters actually began, that was in '84. When I first got to Los Angeles and my sister was trying to educate me on what was going on in LA, she said, come, I'm gonna take you to an Uncle Jam's Army dance. Uncle Jam's Army, I didn't know what the heck it was, but she said, oh, you gotta come, you gotta see this. So we go to LA Sports Arena, and I looked in there, I was just amazed. It was like 10,000 kids in there. The whole bottom was just covered with kids, and there was no band, it was just DJs. It was just DJs mixing. I said, what the, you know, it was Egyptian Lover and Bobcat, and, you know, it was a bunch of people just, it was like probably 8 sets of turntables. And so I was like, that's it. I'm going to tie in with these guys, and we're going to get them over to KDAY. And so I finally tracked down the guy behind it, which was Roger Clayton, or at least he was the front person. And I said, Roger, you know, I'm Greg Mack. I just moved to town. I sure would like for you guys to be down with us at KDAY, blah, blah, blah. And so Roger arrogantly looked around at all those kids, and he says, motherfucker, does it look like I need radio? But me, I've never seen roadblocks, I only see hurdles. So I'm like sitting here on the way home like, okay, how do I go at this guy? And every Monday we would have music meetings with all of the record labels. They would bring me their new product to see if I would play it. And Alonzo Williams, World Class Wrecking Cru at the time, had approached me about playing a record that they had done. But I was telling him, I said, you know, I really want to get out there, man, in the streets like those guys, Uncle Jam's Army. And Roger wasn't feeling Alonzo either, or Alonzo wasn't feeling Roger either, because he wouldn't let him do anything. So he says, what you got in mind? I says, well, you know, I'm thinking about starting this thing called a traffic jam, where I have mixes on my show. For people on the way home. I want them to hear mixes. And at that time, and I should have trademarked it because nobody was using that terminology for mixes on the radio in the afternoon. So anyway, he said, you know, you can use my DJs. I said, really? I said, they're any good? He said, yeah. So he brought them up there, and it was Dr. Dre and DJ Yella. Dr. Dre's mixes were not just mixes, they were productions. You know, he would actually lay down a track, and then he would mix in over it. It would end up being a multi-track mix, or production, I guess I should say. And so the thing exploded, the show, the Traffic Jam exploded. And we built a great relationship, and we started doing stuff with Lonzo and Dre and Yella. But Dre and Yella got so busy from, you know, the music side, and they said, well, you know, Greg, we can't do it, you know. After about a year, they said they just didn't have the time, blah, blah, blah. And so I had to put together some other DJs, and a rapper named Kid Frost introduced me to a guy named Tony G. And Tony G, Cuban guy, I had never in my life seen somebody mix like that. I've never seen somebody that could bend a record in half while he's scratching, never miss a beat. And the good thing I liked about Tony is that Tony, you know, he appealed to every race, every age group. He fit in everywhere. But the only problem I had with Tony is that if a kid busted, you know, if a kid bumped his turntable, Tony would knock him out. And so, you know, every time we'd have to carry somebody out of the place, we always thought that they were dead. We're like, dude, why'd you hit him? Well, you hit my tables. But anyway, he was good, but I needed somebody for the older black crowd. And so I tracked down a guy named Jammin' Gemini. And he had quite a following with that crowd. And then I needed somebody that was a battler. Even though Tony G was a good battler also, and good with the other, I wanted somebody that was a good scratcher and just, you know, could go wild and go up against anybody. So I brought in DJ Joe Cooley. So Jammin' Gemini, Joe Cooley, and Tony G were my first Mixmasters. Mixmaster was a name that DJ Bobcat, who was with Uncle Jam's Army at the time, because I was going to call myself the Mac Attack Marines, and we were going to go to war against the Army. And he was like, nah, everybody will think you're biting and stuff. Why don't you call yourself the Mixmasters? And so he said, yeah, the Mac Attack Mixmasters. And that was the original name. But because we had three of the toughest DJs in LA, everybody wanted to be a Mixmaster after that.
Thanks for watching StreetTV.net. If you're not subscribed, please hit that button below and click the bell to receive alerts and notifications. Feel free to comment below so you can give us your feedback, and be sure to watch the 2 related episodes to the right. If you want to support this platform or follow us on social media, visit the links in the description. And thanks for watching StreetTV.net.